Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. 2 episodes today because I want to catch up on some cases we've been covering for quite a while. And I'm sort of eyeball deep in this Sarah Boone case, the suitcase murder. I just got finished today releasing the second part of the interrogation. And if you haven't watched that, I encourage you to go watch it because at first she's really kind of chill about things. But then as she sees the walls closing in and she starts to get a hint, maybe she's going to be arrested, she gets a little snippy and it's just interesting to watch. Tomorrow, I'm going to start going through what happened after that interrogation video with court appearances. There's been major drama in this case, but you would not believe the number of people I've had inbox, comment, email saying, please do the backstory on this case, get caught up. It's a good one. You guys were right. And I always try to look at things you suggest if I have the time, and this was a good one. A lot of people have asked me my opinion about Miss Becky Hill, the clerk of court in the Alec Murdaugh trial. From a personal perspective, let me just say, Becky is one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my entire life. I actually got to know her a little bit better after trial. She came up to Greenville. We went out to dinner and just had a great conversation. When all this started with my health issues, she is one of several people that have become near and dear to me in the true crime world who continually reached out to check how I was doing or to send me little words of encouragement. That's the kind of person Becky is. I'm talking the day that I went to the oncologist. She remembered, sent me a message asking how I was. Now, as far as these allegations go, we've heard one side, and that one side is pretty damning. However, I'm a both sides kind of person. So what I'm waiting for is hopefully some kind of a hearing where we get these jurors under oath, everybody's under oath, let the whole truth come out. These are pretty big allegations. So hopefully we can get it figured out. I will say this, if there is a retrial, y'all send some good juju into the universe that trial happens here in Greenville. I don't know why they would want to have it anywhere near the Low Country because the Murdaugh hold was very strong there. So Columbia would be better. It's an hour and a half for me. Greenville would be ideal. It's huge population. So fingers crossed if it happens. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but you never know. All right. Music fact of the day before we get started. After graduating college, Jimmy Buffett briefly became a journalist. He was hired on at Billboard magazine for a very short time. That was right before he released his first record in 1970. Been listening to Buffett a little bit since he passed. And man, I tell you, his songs are great. Son of a Sailor. Oh, such a good one. I could sit here all day and talk about Buffett lyrics, but this isn't that kind of podcast. Maybe I should start a music podcast because I love talking about music. So moving on to Lori Vallow. Haven't said that name in a while. Still rolls off my tongue just fine. This is a notice of appeal that was filed on her behalf. And so we're just going to get into the meat of the things that they put forth as reasons that they are appealing this. And they start with A. Did the court err in its order dated April 11th, 2022, wherein the court found that the defendant, after spending 10 months in a mental hospital, was competent to stand trial? B. Did the court err in its order dated November 15th, 2022, wherein the court denied the defense expert's request to send the defendant back to the mental hospital rather than proceed to trial? C. Was the defendant's constitutional and statutory right to a speedy trial violated by the government's repeated request for a continuance? D. Was the defendant's constitutional and statutory right to a speedy trial violated by the court's trial setting? E. Did the court err in denying defense challenges for cause of trial jurors due to bias or hardship during jury selection? F. Did the government commit fundamental reversible error in its opening statement to the jury? G. Did the court err in allowing the government to produce evidence of other crimes or acts against the defendant under Rule 404B? You know, the one thing about Charles Vallow's murder is that it is very much a part of this big story. It doesn't make sense to leave any of that out. I mean, it was the thing that kicked off a series of very evil and unfortunate events. H. Did the court err in allowing the government to exceed the scope of its order regarding other crimes or acts against the defendant under 404B? I. Did the court err in allowing the government to amend the grand jury indictment 2 years after the indictment was filed without sending the case back to the grand jury? J. Did the court err in allowing the jury to hear statements of co-conspirators, but then rule in jury instructions that the government need not prove those persons were part of the conspiracy? K. When the grand jury indictment puts the defendant on notice that she is charged with a conspiracy involving 5 or more people, can the trial court ignore that finding and instead proceed with standard conspiracy jury instructions? Did the government commit fundamental reversible error in its closing statement to the jury? M. Did the court err when it granted, without a hearing, the government's objection to the defense request for the court to review all mitigation evidence submitted by the defense for sentencing? N. Should new sentencing hearing be held due to the sentencing court not reviewing all mitigation evidence submitted by the defense? And O. Did the sentencing court abuse its discretion by ordering the defendant to serve 3 consecutive fixed life sentences without parole? P. Did the sentencing court abuse its discretion when it ordered the defendant, who had been found indigent, qualified for a public defender, and had just been ordered to serve life in prison without parole, to pay $165,018 in fines and court costs? Happens all the time. My contact in prison, she was indigent, had a public defender, and is still paying restitution. By the way, I had a YouTube comment. Somebody said, I'm not listening to your podcast anymore because you talked to somebody in prison. Okay, bye-bye. It's not an airport. You don't have to announce your departure. Bye. So that was kind of the meat of their argument for appeal. We will see what happens with that, and I'll keep you posted. Moving on to Rex Heuermann. The Sumter County Sheriff's Office told Newsday that so far there is no link between Rex Heuermann, who we know, who is suspected to be the Gilgo Beach murderer, Long Island serial killer, a couple of names attached to him there, and Julia Ann Bean, the South Carolina woman who has been missing for over 6 years. We talked about this on a previous episode. If you remember, her daughter says she specifically remembers her mother leaving with Rex in a Chevy Avalanche. Now, the FBI has been asked by Sumter County Sheriff's Office to join in the investigation about her disappearance. Sumter County Sheriff Mark Bordeaux told the Today Show that so far the connection is zero. He said, "We have hearsay, but whether or not the man was Rex Heuermann, we have yet to be able to determine. Just because we want so badly to find the whereabouts of Miss Julia Bean does not mean that we can presuppose anything. We have to operate in the world of facts." Julia's daughter is also working with investigators in her mom's disappearance. Also, 2 escorts have spoken out about Rex, saying that he was violent and aggressive during their encounters with him. The women were interviewed by the anti-human trafficking unit at separate jails that they're being housed at currently. Neither woman was injured by Rex during their encounter. Sheriff Errol Toulon said that Rex is meeting with clergy weekly, and also said that Rex is emotionless, saying, "I've not seen any emotion from him. You wonder what's going on. Is there something going on inside that is brewing?" He's being held in a special unit for his safety. He spends 16 to 20 hours a day inside his cell, which is 60 square feet. He has access to books, TVs, newspapers, and mail. He walks alone in the small recreation area. While he is off self-harm watch, officers still watch Rex for signs of distress, which include pacing in his cell, putting his hands to his head, and crying. Y'all, I'd be doing all 3 of those, and I wouldn't need to be on self-harm watch if I was in the pokey. I'd be pacing, putting my hands to my head, and crying like the little girl I am. Also, when Rex has a court appearance, he can walk from the jail to the courthouse without ever having to go outside, eliminating the need for a vehicle to take him. Probably much safer given what he is accused of. Officers are going to question escorts who are in custody on Rikers Island to see if they know anything about Rex Heuermann. Rex has only been visited by his attorney and one person that they will not name. His next court date is set for September 27th. Moving on to Kouri Richins, the fentanyl mom, the one that allegedly poisoned her husband with fentanyl, and then went on to write a children's book about coping with grief of losing a father. She was back in court last week for a really brief 10-minute hearing, and her attorney, Sky Lazaro, who I love, said that she has 1.2 million pieces of evidence to sift through, most of that being cell phone data. Doesn't look like this is going to go to trial anytime soon. When asked by the judge on September 1st if they would like to schedule a preliminary hearing, Kouri's attorney said February of March of next year would be best. And she said, I'm going to be very ineffective from the word go if I don't read what they provided to me. The date will likely be set at a scheduling hearing, which is set for November 3rd, but the judge would be opening to scheduling sooner if Sky requests that. She also acknowledged the need to move quickly since Kouri will remain incarcerated in jail until her trial. Ms. Lazaro also acknowledged the need to move quickly because Kouri is currently in jail and will remain there until her trial. Kouri sat quietly through the hearing. She became upset after it was over. Her attorney said about the show of emotion, this is hard. She's been in custody. She's lost her kids. She's going through a lot. All she wanted from the beginning was to grieve her husband. So a little bit of Murdaugh stuff. I didn't talk about the presser after it happened. Becky's co-author, Neil Gordon, said that Becky followed all the guidelines and she will answer the allegations truthfully, point by point, and she welcomes the opportunity to do so. Jim Griffin told ABC News they got indications from people inside the courtroom that something happened in the jury room. They didn't know exactly what, so they went to find out. He said they were met with silence, and eventually he thinks Becky's book opened the door to get information from the jury that led to this filing. Mr. Harpootlian said they have affidavits from 2 jurors and interviews with other jurors indicating that Miss Becky went into the jury room prior to the defense case, discouraging them from believing anything put out by the defense. We've already heard that. Griffin said they didn't reach out to Becky directly. They reached out to those jurors. Jim Griffin said he met with Alec in person to show him the affidavits from the jurors, and he said Alec was startled. He was shaking, shocked, and understood the significance of it and thanked them for beating the bush to get the information. The jury heard 2.5 weeks of fraud before they even really got to the murder case, by the way. Mr. Harpootlian said if you look at the forensics, there's no way Alec could have committed the murders. He also said there is a group juror text, and last week someone asked the group who's talking. They both say 100% they believe Alec did not murder Maggie and Paul. Rachel Morin, moving on. September 5th marked 1 month since her murder. Criminal profiler Matt Brown has worked up the suspect to create a behavioral profile. It says this man is a suspected serial killer and is an immediate danger to the community. He is a violent criminal with these dangerous psychopathic traits. He's narcissistic, lacks empathy, manipulative, and a pathological liar. After committing a crime in Los Angeles, he came to Bel Air, Maryland. This choice of a location to a small, lesser-known city is odd, meaning he must know someone in Bel Air where he has been able to stay. The attack on Rachel occurred while she was running and was committed by an opportunistic predator who saw her that evening. This means it is likely the predator has a specific reason to be in the area on the path. Either he runs it, travels on it, works near it, or is living near it. If you remember, this trailhead sort of backs up right to an apartment complex and the parking lot. And all along that trail are homes in neighborhoods. I had not thought of that until I read this. Interesting point. The suspect would not be accountable for either at work or home sometime between 6 p.m. and dusk on Saturday, August 5th, when the attack occurred. Police are asking the public for help identifying him. The sheriff's office told Law and Crime that none of the tips they've received so far have brought them any closer to finding the suspect. They have had investigators in Chicago tracking down leads. And the sheriff told Law and Crime as well, there's nothing right now to stop him from doing it again. I believe, and our investigators believe, he will do it again. That's terrifying. There's no telling where this guy is. Officials have also speculated that the suspect could be a serial killer. Also, guess who popped in the picture? Dog the bounty hunter. He has joined the search for the suspect. A couple of things he told News Nation about the doorbell video that stood out to him is the suspect's necklace, which is tight, which to him means it's not likely taken off very often. He also noted the military style haircut, saying there are 2 bases nearby. He also noted the suspect's cell phone is in his hand, saying that they could possibly get information off of cell phone towers. He's referring to that doorbell video after the crime in Los Angeles happened, the home invasion, also where he assaulted a young child. Officials also note that the video is months old and the suspect's hairstyle could have changed. There is now a $10,000 reward for tips leading to the suspects. Tips can be called in to 410-836-7788. All right, let's move on to this hot mess express that is Ruby Franke. She is a woman that had a very successful YouTube channel, 8 Passengers. This happened in Utah. It was dedicated to her family life and was teaching viewers how to lead a wholesome family full of honesty, humbleness, and joy. She was arrested, by the way, and charged with 6 counts of felony aggravated child abuse after 2 of her 6 kids were found malnourished and abused. This is what I don't get, y'all. This channel had over 2 million subscribers and 1,000 videos. Her husband, Kevin, moved out of their home about a year ago. He has not been charged in this, but y'all, who's watching this stuff? Who is supporting this stuff? I've seen clips and it is very, very disturbing. This woman is like mommy dearest. I mean, ugh. How do you get 2 million subscribers doing this kind of stuff? It blows my mind. In Utah, the definition of aggravated child abuse includes starvation, broken bones, head injuries from hitting or shaking, and suffocation. Also arrested was Ruby's business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt, a friend of Ruby's who owns a counseling service that teaches people how to improve their lives by being responsible, honest, and humble. She forgot to mention being a child abuser in there. Ruby has appeared on Jodi's counseling videos, both women being held without bond. The name of Jodi's channel is Connections. That's Connextions. And Connections Classroom is a parenting workshop class aimed at creating joy in your life and your relationships. They call themselves Moms of Truth. You can't make this stuff up, y'all. Ruby was arrested at Jodi's house after Ruby's 12-year-old son jumped out of a window at Jodi's house and ran to a neighbor's house asking for food and water. He had duct tape around his ankles and his wrists. A neighbor called law enforcement around 10:50 a.m. on August 30th. The boy was taken to the hospital where he was placed on a medical hold due to deep lacerations from being tied up with rope and also from his malnourishment. His 10-year-old sister, he told them his sister was also in the same situation in the house. She was found also malnourished, and she was taken to the hospital by EMS. Both kids have been placed in protective custody. In a search warrant of the house, police say they found evidence consistent with the marking found on the juveniles. So the 911 call is really hard to listen to. This neighbor gets very emotional talking about the state of this young man. So it starts out, he said, I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. We know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's got tape around his legs. He's hungry and he's thirsty. He's asked us to call the police. He's very afraid. This is where he gets emotional. He said, this kid has obviously been, I think he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds. We need the cops here as soon as possible. Then I heard the audio of where dispatch is talking back and forth. And it says a 12-year-old male showed up with tape around his legs, thirsty and asking for help. Said he was afraid and asking for police. He says a female has duct tape around both ankles, but he's not telling why. Dispatch tells the officers that the caller is becoming emotional, talking about the child's health. They say they will stage a medical for this call. They say Ruby had a traffic offense just a couple of days before she was arrested. The boy said there are 2 sisters at the home and says that the caller and the child will be sitting on the front porch to wait on deputies. Prosecutors say that both women either caused or allowed someone to torture Ruby's 12-year-old son and 10-year-old daughter. Both of the children were malnourished and emotionally harmed, according to the state. Arrest records say that Jodi had to have known about the abuse, malnourishment, and neglect. Ruby and Jodi were seen just 2 days before their arrest on a video together. Now get this, Springville police visited Franke's home 15 times between March 2019 and August 31st of this year. In 5 of those visits, police were assisting Child Protective Services. In April of last year, Child Protective Services had been alerted that 2 kids were out running in the road unsupervised. But when police drove through, they didn't see the kids. On September 18th of last year, police were at Ruby's home. They were called by Ruby's oldest daughter. She said neighbors had told her that the younger kids had been left home alone for days while Ruby was in St. George with her friend, which is Jodi, the co-defendant, I guess you could call her. We'll just say the other witch. Officers saw children in the home, but they wouldn't answer the door. Officers saw the children on the phone, and then they went upstairs where they were out of sight. Neighbors who had gathered outside during this visit said Ruby would often leave the kids for extended times to go to St. George with Jodi. Central Intake was contacted, and the report started. Officers showed up again to follow up on September 22nd, the 23rd, the 26th, and October 3rd, assisting Child Protective Services. My question is this. We've got Child Protective Services involved at this time last year. How are these kids not removed? I don't understand. I'm not blaming CPS. It is underfunded. These people that do this job are amazing. They care about these kids. You can't see 100 plus kids in 30 days for any length of time. We've got to throw whatever money these Child Protective Services, divisions of children and families need to ensure that our kids are doing well in foster care. I don't know why this is not a top priority in this country. Y'all, let's go march. I'm ready. Neighbors in Springville, whose kids have been over for play dates, said the kids would make comments about not being allowed to have drinks or food if they were being disciplined. Neighbors knew other neighbors had contacted authorities about the kids, but the behavior they saw was hard to say it was abuse. They had suspicions the kids were being mistreated, but they had no solid evidence of it, especially when it came to physical abuse. Neighbors say the kids were seen in the Springville neighborhood and would play with other kids as well. They would also walk to church, but that stopped a few months ago, and they lost touch with the kids in April of this year. The YouTube channel Now Look is seeing its share of scandal. In 2020, the family was criticized for banning their oldest son from his own bedroom for 7 months. The crime, he told his younger brother to wake up at 2 a.m. that they were going to Disneyland. So the kid gets up, packs his clothes, and goes outside. To take away a kid's room for 7 months and force that child to sleep on a beanbag for 7 months. Lord have mercy, y'all. In another video, she was criticized for not taking her child, who was in kindergarten, their lunch when they forgot it at home. Okay, kids are 5 and 6. My 18-year-old forgot her lunch the other day. It happens. The teacher was worried about the kid being hungry. And then what does Ruby do? Make sure she doesn't eat off other people's plates. This is not a good mother, y'all. And yet, how much money was she raking in on this YouTube channel with 2.2 million subscribers and over 1,000 videos posted? A lot. There's another video where Ruby also threatened to cut the head off of her daughter's stuffed toy as punishment for her cutting things around the house. Look, if I punished my kids like that every time they got some scissors and cut something up around this house, we would have an army of headless stuffed animals. Kids do things. Threatening violence, withholding food, that kind of thing to me is abuse. Especially withholding food and drink for punishment, that is abuse. Nothing excuses that. Another video shows Ruby saying her and her husband told the 2 youngest kids they would not be getting presents from Santa because they had been selfish and weren't responding to punishments like being kept home from school and scrubbing baseboards. Her reasoning she gave in one video was, it's because they're so numb. The more numb your child is, the bigger the outcome. They need to wake them up. Critics of her channel had previously started a petition online asking Child Protective Services to get involved with the family. Their oldest daughter has said online that she has cut ties with her parents. Sherry Franke, who's 20, posted a photo on her Instagram story the day her mom was arrested that showed a police car on the street in the neighborhood. She captioned the photo, "Finally." How telling is that? Then she posted a statement which said, "Hi all, today has been a big day. Me and my family are so glad justice is being served. We've been trying to tell police and CPS for years about this and so glad they finally decided to step up. Kids are safe, but there's a long road ahead. Please keep them in your prayers and also respect their privacy. After Ruby was arrested, she refused to speak to investigators and asked for an attorney. Ruby's husband is also referring questions to his attorney. The channel 8 Passengers was launched in 2015 and gained 2.5 million subscribers and over 1,000 videos posted. Now, YouTube removed her channel earlier this year, although it's not known why. It's widely believed to be due to criticism of the channel. Ruby went to the Connections channel, which was owned by Jodi. So that explains maybe why she moved in with Jodi, to keep that gravy train going, since, people don't take kindly to watching a mom like withhold food from her kids, even though 2.5 million people did. But get this, y'all. Ruby had also been charging parents between $5,000 and $15,000 as a mental health counselor for parents, saying she was a mental fitness trainer. Let's see how she's fitness personal items in her little tiny jail cell. Other scandals with the channel have included videos posted by others exposing her withholding food from her kids, exploiting them, and accusing one daughter of faking an eating disorder. She had been criticized for continuing to film after kids said they did not want to be on camera, or filming and posting moments like her son first learning to shave. How embarrassing for that young man. He didn't want that on there, but she put it on. Now, that's going to be on the internet forever. Ruby's neighbors have been concerned for a while about her treatment of the children. A male neighbor who did not want to be identified told NBC News, "Everyone is just breathing a collective sigh of relief because we thought they were going to come out of that house with body bags." She also would comment on her neighbors, including lecturing a male neighbor about a poster of a woman in shorts in his garage. Really, Ruby? A woman in shorts, yet you got kids duct tape and rope tied to whatever you had them tied to, and you're not feeding them? Neighbors also say that she took Christmas away one year because she said that her kids were not repenting correctly. Family members have also expressed relief she was arrested. Her sister Bonnie posted a now deleted YouTube video saying, "It would feel very out of place for me to continue to post my regular content after the arrest of my sister. It feels like a weight has been lifted and we know our nieces and nephews are safe." A cousin of Ruby's spoke to Law and Crime Network and said that similar methods of punishment go back generation in hers and Ruby's family, and she's not surprised about the arrest. The cousin said that she fears for her own safety and says that she hasn't seen Ruby in over 15 years. And she says she was very young at that time. But she says her own history and her mother's history of mistreatment gives context for the multi-generational abuse. She told Anjanette Levy on Law and Crime's podcast, which is called Sidebar. I highly recommend it, you guys. "I suppose I wasn't expecting some of the details in that story to line up with some of the details in my own family history. I guess what I'm trying to say, my own mother handcuffed my sisters when they were young, and a lack of food was not uncommon. It wasn't necessarily out of a lack of money. There was a time when it could have been prevented, but it wasn't." She also claims her grandmother would handcuff her mother when she was a child. She goes on to say, "This is something that is multi-generational. I'm very privy to the way that I was treated and the way that my siblings were treated. So to see that further down the line is not shocking, but disgusting. The whole tree, from the bottom of the roots to the tips of the branches, the whole tree is blighted." Ruby's husband, Kevin, said through his attorney, his urgent focus is simply to keep his children together under his fatherly care. After being arrested, Jodi told police that the children should never be allowed around other children. You know what, Jodi? Shut your mouth. They face 15 years in prison and fines up to $10,000 if convicted. Man, it's just insane. And, you think about this and people that actually do this on YouTube, what was happening when that camera wasn't rolling? Well, we got a good idea, but I would venture a guess to say that it went even worse, if possible, than duct taping and rope tying your kids. Y'all, it's a crazy world. And unfortunately, a lot of times these kids are the recipients. If you see something, say something. Don't hold it in. You could be the person that makes a difference in saving the life of a child or even an adult. It doesn't discriminate. All right, guys, I'll be back tomorrow. Hope you have a good rest of your evening. We'll see you soon.